Hi, everyone. Carmen Didisco here on the Launch Network. We got an awesome show today for the Launch Pad. This has been waiting for this show because myself, it is about talking and selling and what to do if you're looking to bring products to the government. And I think this is going to be an awesome show. I, for one, need the knowledge, experience, and the go-to people. I'm going to bring on Jenny Clark, who they say is the Oprah of government contracting. One thing I got to tell you, Jenny, I'm not going to cry on the show. What's happening?
Oh my gosh. I think I could come up with some ways to make you cry, Carmen.
Yeah, I tell you what, not to cut you off. When I tell you a story about a contract I lost, I may end up crying.
Well, I want to hear that because that's how people learn is they said, Jenny, I didn't think I needed any help with this until I heard Carmen just crying about how he missed out on what it was, a $50,000 opportunity, 500,000. How big was it anyway, Carmine?
Oh yeah, it was close to $250,000. And I just didn't know what the heck I was doing. I got these forms. I thought I had every T crossed, every I dotted, and they sent me back. One of the bids I won, but I couldn't deliver what I said because I had no idea what I was doing. So that's what's so great about what you're doing with GovCon. I want to talk all about that. But does this happen where, people, they make these mistakes, but they don't realize that knowledge, they have to pay for that knowledge?
Well, and you want to work with people when they're in their pre-revenue state to give them the free resources, say, okay, you're not ready for me yet, but here's where you need to go. Here's the people you need to talk to. Here's the things you need to be watching. Here's the websites where you can get the information. Go do some research and learn about this. If you're serious, you're going to do your homework. At the same time, there does come a point where you're having to decide between success and failure. You have to decide if you're really all in and going to do it. I'll tell you, I talked to a guy the other day and we talk probably every 6 months or so. And he talks to me about this really cool device that he's got, excited about it. And I think that I've been too helpful to him because he's like calling me like my sister Jenny. And that's great, but Jenny needs to eat too, right? And I've got to be able to identify the people with real potential. And the people with real potential are going to invest. They're going to have a top team. They're going to figure out a way to do it. They're going to let nothing stop them. So here's the cool part about it. He calls me up and he has this product, this like a pulse thing that if he said this would have prevented the tragedy in Las Vegas years ago when there was the shooting. He said it's a vest. I'm trying to sell it to the NFL. I want to sell it to special operations. I want to do all this stuff. And it's like, one day you'll be serious enough about it that we actually say we're going to have an investment discussion. I'm going to bring in some top experts. That's really why we created GovCon, though, is because I know there are people out there that need our help, and you and me and Kirk Burton, we're all willing to help, and we'll give people some free advice. But at some point, they've got to step up for training or something else. So here's the kicker of that guy. He sent in an SBIR, and because he talked to the project manager, they were all over it. They loved it and everything else. And there was he sent in his 5 pages. So some clerk called back and said, we need a cover page. He submitted his cover page. He exceeded the page limit and he blew it. He won't have a chance like that for 2 more years because that's how the cycle works. God. Hey, I'd like to introduce real quick my buddy, Kirk Burton, coming to us from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Kirk, tell us some wisdom today from the world of innovation.
Hey, Jenny. I am glad to be here. Yeah, so just following along with the conversation, it's not just small businesses that make those mistakes. I've seen the largest do it too, and sometimes a small business can take advantage of that. I saw a large business bid on a contract, they underbid everybody, they got it, and then they're trying to find a Microsoft certified systems engineer with 5 or 6 certifications to work at Cannon Air Force Base, which is in the middle of nowhere, for $70K a year. I'm like, what? You really bid that? So yeah,
right. It's
knowing
price,
the
it's
rules.
Cost, and it's understanding what the market is and what you're going to deliver. And that's one of the reasons we're talking about innovation in general, because I don't know anything about innovation, but somebody calls me with this cool idea and I've been following it all along. And I just want to say, if I could make it possible for that innovator, that inventor, that creative person to identify an opportunity to develop that idea, that is my goal. The other thing that we're really focusing on, Kirk, is we talked about, let's go download a list of all the SBIR, Small Business Innovative Research, phase 1 winners, because so many people will invest and get a phase 1. And what we're talking about, and we'll be talking about at GovCon Summit, is, Kirk, they don't know how to get to a phase 2. And you're a cyber expert, right?
I've been called a lot worse, so I'll take that.
So what we're going to be doing at GovCon Summit is bringing together essentially a 5 or 6 hour curriculum where we're bringing in top experts on panels to say, here's where you are, here's where you want to go. When they ask you this question, you don't say, no, my product doesn't do that. You say, let me find out and understand a little bit more about what you want. Kirk, have you led somebody through that before? I
have. And what's so great about this GovCon community is that you have people with experience dealing with the clients. What so many tech entrepreneurs lack is the ability to tell their story in a way that resonates with a client. So they're not able to build, a use case because they don't understand the military side, or they're not able to explain in terms that the user will understand why their technology is so great. So being able to tap into people that have that kind of experience that can help them develop a use case, describe in real world terms for the client, an instance when this will save your life, make you move faster, allow you to communicate when nobody else can, those kinds of things.
Wow.
Well,
really
I like
important.
the word that you're talking about, use case, because again, I don't always know the lingo. And that's one of the biggest struggles that we have all the way across defense innovation, because a lot of the people that are coming to defense innovation were in combat, were downrange, know what's needed. And they're like, every time I'd open it up and we'd be in Korea and they'd send me these really crappy winter gloves, I was like, lowest price again. They don't even keep my hands warm. I can't hold my weapon straight. And the same thing is true. We've got to be able to, as business people, communicate with defense entrepreneurs in ways that they can understand it. So the thing is, they'll call me up and they'll start explaining to me what their gadget does. This Halo does this stands for that. I'm like, you're talking to the wrong person. Yeah. I'm the business person. I got to get you on the phone with Kirk. Kirk is going to tell you, buddy, I like what you're talking about, but you're saying it wrong. And I've asked you 8 times, what is the problem you solve? How many times in a conversation do you ask that, Kirk? And how do you get that answer?
Oh, yeah. So multiple times in a conversation. And there are entrepreneurs who are so sold on their vision that they're kind of not willing to open up and accept somebody else's. And you have to figure out, it's a different approach with everybody, how to get through to them that the way you're selling it, nobody's going to buy it. The way you're describing it does not resonate with that, client group or something like that. It is as many other important things are in life. It's all about being able to tell a story.
Wow.
And so, Carmine, people come to you all the time with great ideas. I mean, I even see a light bulb on your microphone set there. How do you convince them what their path is? Because this is really a business issue. Wow. I've got a great gadget. I want to turn it into a product. I want to sell it to all these people. But the first thing is you've got to find what the customer wants and how it fits, right? Tell us your wisdom today.
Well, first, I love sitting back and listening to you guys because I see that I'm not that crazy. I mean, I'm crazy because I'm an inventor. But what you guys are experiencing, not only on the government side, all inventors, and I don't want to say all, but most of them, including myself, experience, we get so emotionally attached. And I loved what Kirk said, to our product or idea that we think that everyone is going to have the same imagination, the same passion, the same wants right off the bat. So I don't even have to explain it the right way. They're just going to want it when I show it to them. And it doesn't happen. You can't depend on someone to have the same imagination or any imagination when you're showing a product. Then you put on another level, we're dealing with the government on top of your product. I mean, you are batting zero right off the bat. So you really have to bring in experts. You have to bring in people that are going to make you take that emotion out and really see your product for the business that it is. And it's very, very important. I love I'm getting excited about GovCon just hearing this, because I have so many good products from inventors that just are sitting there. They're gathering dust because they tried pitching it with their passion, their want, their emotion, and it didn't go anywhere.
Well, didn't you tell me you've got a bulletproof backpack in your portfolio there? Tell me something about that.
Yeah.
How did they come up with it? Why is it important? Who's going to be looking at that in the government? And then we'll ask Kirk, who needs this? Go ahead, if you would, Carmine.
Yeah, so we have a couple of different products that have come in. We have many, many products that we work on here, and some are on the government side or defense and when and real quick before I explain that, when I say government, does that include the defense side?
It does. I usually call it federal contracting to differentiate it from state and local. I also use the word contracting because a lot of people say, you build houses, you're in construction. No. We support the Department of Defense in getting their product up to the appropriate customer, because the Department of Defense is putting out all kinds of initiative to get innovation, because we realize, our government realizes, our leaders realize that we have to use our American ingenuity and innovation, and people are inventing stuff all day long. But what the guys in the field are saying is, I need this, but I need it now, or I need it here. And if you tell me I'm going to wait 2 years to get through a procurement cycle, A, I'll be dead by then. And B, I'll be out of this position where I won't have authority to buy it. And C, I can't get it through the supply chain that fast.
Yeah.
And when you think about, remember when they were talking about how do you get the bulletproof vest and the armor plating and the things like that? It's like, this needs to be shipped now, and you can't go through the entire procurement cycle. The other part about it is, you're not going to convince Big Army to go buy it. You got to talk to people that specialize in innovation inside there. And actually, meeting with operators is great. But saying, I met a guy in a bar in Germany and I told him about my stuff and he works in the Army. Do those work? You know, what's really funny about this is, I've been doing some online dating. This is all the same thing. You know, you got to know what your objective is. You got to be able to recognize that there is a person on the other end that has to at least align with your objectives, or you're just wasting your time. And, you get aligned, you figure out what you're really doing. You identify, I think you called it, Kirk, in our sessions, we're going to talk about basically 5 problems. One is, what is it and what does it do? What are the other 5? Can you run through them again for me?
Yeah, so you've got to be able to very quickly, this has got to be ingrained. It's got to be something you do almost automatically. What is the problem you're trying to solve? How does your technology solve it? How is it better or unique in terms of how that problem is currently being solved? And what's it going to cost? You got to have all those things kind of at the ready. And a lot, you talked about SBIR, the Small Business Innovation Research Program, earlier. Great program, awesome program. I have, in fact, done a lot of work with companies, hundreds of companies in the program. And the cut for phase 1 is incredibly difficult, maybe 10%. On a good year, it might be 11 or 12%. But the key is to turn that phase 1 into a phase 2. And that requires some focus, but it also requires you to broaden your outlook a little bit, because this investment is basically a non-recurring investment in research and development for your company. So you need to broaden your horizon a little bit and look not only at what the government's asking you to do, but how can I use this outside the government? Where else might it fit? And too many cyber companies get lost in the process of, I've got this awesome thing that's going to solve this national security problem. And that's their sole focus. And I've been in so many conversations where you say, well, yeah, but it sounds like the automobile industry would be really interested in that as well. I mean, you've developed a switch that will activate safety systems in 1/10 of a microsecond. Well, yeah, but you know, I've got to get this into this MRAP vehicle. And so I'm talking to the PM, and that's great. You're doing exactly what the government wants you to do, but so many things can interrupt your progress. You know, a change in a PM, a change in your champion. A champion is so important in government, and those kind of things can derail you. And if your only plan is, I'm going to give this to the PM for the MRAP, then you're done.
Well, Carmine, I guess you run into this a lot where people are only thinking about the immediate and they're not thinking about the whole iterative process. And I think this is part of the reason I actually started GovConSummit years ago, because I was in a meeting and Hondo Gertz was up there. And Kirk, I know you were very involved in SoftWorks with Tambrian Bates and a number of other people. And he said, I think that we need to have collisions and collaboration, and people need to iterate and fail faster. And we've got to have a process for doing that. And just like in my business, I'm evolving every time. It's taken me a year to get to the point where I could see myself 6 months out and starting to plan on that, because what I do in my business tomorrow is not nearly as important as what I'm creating to build in the future. Carmine, dual use technologies. I think there's a lot going on. And by the way, I brought my PAMI pocket.
Love Pammy's products.
So this is a product that would only suit girl nerds, you know, but it also comes with different versions that have like stars on them or flamingos or a daiquiri or something like that. And that's for people that like to go out and drink, or they want it on the beach because they can put their phone and their ID and their credit card and anything else that they need inside here. I got lipstick, I got my pens, I got my business cards, I got a little cash. And I found this when I first moved to Tampa and started meeting people, because I was going everywhere. And I found out about this PAMI pocket, and she's had different versions of it over time. She sold it different places. It's great. It has a zipper because I have to have everything attached to me. I am not a typical female though. A typical female wants a cute purse, and it's big enough to put all my stuff in. And most people, like my daughters, are horrified that I walk around with this around my neck. It's Jenny's equivalent of a pocket protector. Carmine, what was the difference in going to market and her creating different versions of this for different sizes of the market, right?
Yeah, it's a perfect example. As a matter of fact, I just judged some pitch panels for the PGA merchandise show out of Orlando. Usually it was virtual, but I was judging some products, and I actually mentioned Pammy's product because it's great for golfers. It's great for multiple use. So once you start changing the look, the design, the pictures, you know, you could get some guys that might even use it, but it's very versatile and can be used all over the place. So that's the difference about when you're building a product. As Kurt mentioned, you can't be tunnel visioned. You have to know that your product is going to spread out. If it's a good product, it's going to be a living thing. It's going to spread out to other event, you know, other categories on its own if it's good. I mean, look at the iPhone. You know, they made it to be a phone and listen to music. And now it has so many uses. It's a living thing. It's going to move out and so on. So Pammy's product is a perfect example of that. People are looking, when people have your product and they're looking for other uses for it, you've really done a good job.
Well, that's a really good point. And that's part of the reason why we've got the people that are coming to GovConSummit. They're going to be speakers. And here's how it's going to work. Now, Carmine, you called me after we had a previous discussion, and I said, oh, it'd be so cool to do a Shark Tank. And you said you would do it in like I'm doing a Shark Tank. I don't know how to do this. But what we're intending to do is every day during GovConSummit, have just a little fun session where we bring on 3 or 4 different people to give their little pitch. And if it gives them pitch practice, if it gets them feedback, and it gets them excited about, it's like if you're going to sing, you got to have an audience. You got to sing everywhere. You've got to be willing to look like an idiot, because that's how you grow, and that's how you grow faster. That's how you fail faster. But Kirk, I'm going to come back to you about dual use technology, because that was one of the big ideas behind the original part of SoftWorks. Is they said you can use it. There was one I went to, and they were saying we need a oxygen mask for a dog. And the Army needed it because we jump out of airplanes with dogs, and sometimes they're fine, but they're a little dazed. And I don't want to carry an 80-pound dog while I'm trying to wake them back up. But the same thing is true that in the veterinary field, there's probably times where they need something like that, or they could adapt something else. So that's probably not a great example. But Kirk, what is the best example you could think of a company that's done something successfully? Or how do people figure out how to do that? How are we going to help them at GovCon go down that path?
So yeah, that's great, Jenny. Dual use is critical. In financial terms, it's diversification. It's having a broader base of clients that you can deal with, so that, I told people when COVID kicked off, the government was still writing checks. The rest of your business might have started to dry up a little bit, but the government was still writing checks. But there are other times when having the ability to branch out to a commercial audience is really what you need. So Daryl Katz, who is at Techstars now, very successful entrepreneur, and he built his company, and he did multiple SBIR awards, but always in his mind, his approach was, this is a non-recurring R&D investment. I'm going to meet the terms of my contract. I'm going to give the government what I want. But while I'm developing, I'm not going to close my eyes to what this can be in other markets, in other places. And he used that to successfully grow his business and serve more clients, more customers. It is a way to not just, a CIBR, if you do everything right, you might wind up with 1.3 mil through the process. And that's great. But if you don't have a plan for what to do with that, so here's an example. I went out to visit, I had a contract where I used to visit CIBR phase 1 companies all over the country and just doing a little assessment. And I went out to this guy, and at the time, I don't know if it's still the case, developing a sensor that could tell you when you hit a dangerous level of CO2 in the air was hard. That was tough. Nobody was able to do that. And so this little company out in California, Carlsbad, had developed a CO2 sensor, and they were responding to a Navy solicitation out of SOCOM, because you want, in a dry submersible, small enclosed space, you want to track those kind of things. And so he's all excited. He's telling me his plan. He's telling me how he's going to get his cost down by making so many. And I said, do you have any idea how many dry submersibles the SOCOM folks have? And he said, well, no, not really. I'm assuming, maybe 100. I said, no, currently they have 0. They're developing one, but they currently don't have any because the last one caught on fire. They had a battery issue. He's like, oh, I said, so they want this. There are probably other applications inside vehicles and things, but you're not going to sell 2 million of these a year at $1.50. So where else can we make this work? Who else has a CO2 problem? RVs, boats, all sorts of different places he could use this technology. But if you're relying on your government market and you haven't done the work to kind of do your market research, you can put yourself into a challenging position.
Well, I think what you're really saying is don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
Treat this as a pathway to get funding for R&D development, because that's what it was always started with, but use it as you're going to be developing prototypes and you need to have a process for all of that to get it to work. Hey, Kirk, I would love for you to talk about somebody that you invited specifically for GovCon, and I think you said you got him signed up. Who is he? What's he going to talk about?
So Mike Gertson is a former DARPA PM.
Wow.
I think he actually did two kind of what the normal tour is at DARPA is like 3 or 4 years. I think he did 2 of those. And Mike was a previous Microsoft exec and had developed some games for them. He was in charge of a DARPA project called Visual Media Reasoning. But along with that, he was very interested in the innovation process. And coming from Microsoft, he was a little taken aback by how efficient that process is. Not much. So anyway, Mike has continued to pay attention to that after leaving government, and he is currently an adjunct professor at Johns Hopkins. He teaches commercialization.
Commercialization? You mean there's a way to make this work as a business?
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. Oh, really?
That's a hard problem, especially in the government. Amazingly hard. But yes, so he has done a lot of work on commercialization and looking at where the friction points are. How do we address those as an entrepreneur or an engineer or whatever? How can I best do that? So I'm really excited to have him, put him on a panel and talk about some of the best practices around commercializing technology.
Well, that's going to be great, because what we're doing is we're putting all of the innovation activity on Friday. I think it's April the 23rd.
Mhm.
The reason behind that is there are people that are federal contractors that are doing other services, and then the innovation side is just a piece of it. Many of the companies that I see that have been successful in the federal contracting market have like a SIBR group that's all they do is SIBRs. Right. And when I go and look for companies that are here and they started about 20 years ago, what we're really trying to do is encourage those people that are looking forward. And one of the areas we're talking about is unmanned systems. And I think you called it C4ISR. Kirk, can you explain that? Because I don't know how to explain that. That's like all this stuff needs to be interconnected to find stuff, right?
Right. So C4ISR is a catch-all, command control, computers, intelligence, communications. So it is everything from a common operating picture to use in a tactical operations center to share the views of the battle space to, I don't know, is all the drone feeds that come down, all the sensor feeds, being able to communicate with drones. How do I hand off a drone to a fast mover so that they can work together on target acquisition? All those technologies that are out there zinging electrons around the battle space, whether they're jamming or communicating, and how we control those, use those, it's a huge space. And it's one of those catch-all terms. You can throw it around and people really don't know exactly what it is you're talking about, but they assume it's classified, so they won't ask you any questions.
Well, I think what you're talking about, and this is how I know a little bit about a lot, but I think I saw a billboard at once in Huntsville called interoperability. And they've got all these different systems. And, for me, interoperability is I've got a Google contact list and I have an Outlook contact list. I've got what's on my phone. These are not interoperable, and they should be. And I think about, well, good thing my life doesn't depend on it. But we fought so long because there are large proprietary systems that have been built by very large companies, and their goal, and if I was this kind of business, I'd do the same thing. My goal is to repeat the number of bodies that I had assigned to that contract, developing proprietary software, doing proprietary things, so that I stay on that program in that market, because they can't afford to get rid of me. I was talking to one of my clients in California, and he's doing some activity. What are those little fast ships, littoral ships? There's a big they're funky looking ships, right?
Littoral combat ship, yes.
Exactly. And so that's been a very controversial program over a long period of time. And it seems like we'll be cooking along with funding and everything. He says, oh, we got to stop work order. And what happens in federal contracting is you got to be able to respond to all of those things. But what he explained, he actually wrote me a map of the Navy acquisition system. And he said, there's these 5 major commands, and you can talk to these people, but you get 0 unless you talk to these guys. What's the map, Kirk? You've got that whole, like, you've got a decoder ring, right?
I do have a decoder ring, but I have to give a shout out to several folks in the community who are literally trying to do a map of all of the innovation ecosystem pieces. And that's, it is, if you start to see that, it's like, what? You remember the old chart from the DoD acquisition process that was like a flow chart from hell? It's not quite that bad, but it's close.
Wow.
So Anne Laurent she has developed one that puts together all those pieces and lets you see, oh, I didn't know that there was Naval Works, SoftWorks, an AFWorks, an MGM Works down at the Montgomery, Alabama with the Air Force, Dirty Works.
Where's Dirty Works? I want to go there.
So Dirty Works was actually part of SoftWorks. That was where they kind of bent metal and welded things and made messes. Great. But even the Corps of Engineers have their own works now. So everybody's into the works thing. In some cases it is working, and in some cases not quite so well.
And I think the biggest issue is every one of them has their own pathway, right? I think you mentioned to me on one of our earlier calls how I said, Kirk, it seems like AFWorks is giving away a bunch of money fast. And then you said, yes, but. What was that yes, but?
Well, yeah, so some of the recent things that AFWorks has done with their SBIR program, for example, is traditionally phase 1 has been build the prototype. Prove to me that this can be done. It's called a proof of concept. Doesn't have to be a pretty prototype, but prove to me that what you've been proposing can be accomplished. Where things often break down is finding a customer within the organization. So what the Air Force started to do is they did very small phase 1s, $50,000, very short cycles, 3 to 4 months, I believe. And the purpose of your phase 1 was to find a customer in the Air Force that would agree on paper with a signature that if you're able to prove the concept and it works, they're in for this thing. If you finally create it, they will buy it. It's a great concept, but for so many companies, it was, wow, I got $50,000 last year from the government. Because
exactly.
Again, they're stuck weaving through the paths within the ecosystem, trying to, as the former DepSec Worf used to say, dig tunnels into the Pentagon to try to figure out, who do I talk to? What does a customer look like? How do I reach that person? Who is the right person to get on the phone, who understands what I'm talking about, has the problem, and can get somebody to sign a piece of paper for me? And that's really hard.
Yeah, it's hard enough just to get somebody that I want to talk to take my call, because, it's like I'm on Zoom all day and I'll send out emails, and the people that I really work with, they're text buddies. If they're not up to text, I'm not going to be able to communicate with them. And what we're talking about is being able to talk with government bureaucracy at different levels with different access. And you really don't normally have their cell phone numbers to be able to text them. Carmine, how does this happen in your world? Isn't it a big thing to say? I mean, if you walk in and say, how do I find the customer? And you're like, oh, here, just call this guy. This will do it, right?
You know, it's great. That's why I love just sitting back. Listen, it's the same thing on the retail side that you guys are talking about, the government side. What I love about what you're talking about is that the government puts all these constraints in, all these things you have to hoops you have to jump through. Just like the resale side, you have retail buyers, you have licensing companies, you have contractors that are looking for products, but it's the same thing. You still have to have a good product. You have to know who like Kurt said and you said, you have to know who your customer is. You have to know the problem you're solving. You have to have a good price. Where the heck are you making it? Can you supply enough of them? So I love that we're going to be able to do this, because the retail side, I have a lot of customers that have products that can sell to the federal side. They just had no idea how to do it. This GovCon thing is going to be huge.
Well, it is going to be huge because by delivering it virtually, we're going to be recording the session. So even if people can't come to all the sessions, they'll still get it. But the other part about it is it's a community. I call it inside the wire. I've done a lot of free content. I've done a lot of mentoring. I've done a lot of talking, just like you guys have. And I don't want people to keep showing up for the free stuff. I want the people that are ready to move forward and say, I understand that I basically need a doctorate in innovation to make this work. And what I'm saying is, you personally don't have to have a doctorate in innovation. You need to know the people that do have that, because I call it the group brain. I think of this as a conversation around a kitchen table. When somebody comes in with a business issue anymore, you got to talk legal, you got to talk cost, you got to talk technical, you've got to talk marketing, you've got to say, what's my production cycle? What's the logistics of it? What's the supply chain? None of us anymore can give an answer by ourselves. And so people are wasting their time going, I talked to 10 experts and I didn't get anywhere. Well, that's because those 10 experts were not in the same room. They never will be. We're creating a GovCon community, an innovation alliance within that GovCon community, because that way, once you're signed up for GovCon, you're part of our kind of our membership thing. I call it inside the wire. Once you're inside the wire, you're going to call me up and say, who was that bald guy you were talking to? I'm going to say, I need more information. And, because right now when somebody says, Steve, I know 18 Steves, I'm sorry, give me more information. He was wearing a red shirt. That was not Steve. A couple other guys who got involved in this are our buddies out in California with dual use technology. And it would have been great to have them on here. But Kirk, I think you probably had some conversations with Raul Singh and with Ronnie Trevino. They came to me because I posted stuff on LinkedIn and they're like, we're a Marine and an Army guy, and we've gone through all this and we're tired of seeing people struggle and not make it work. And we're actually creating an entire program. We're going to have a cohort. We're going to show people how to do it. Kirk, could you tell people that know more, tell them the technical side, or tell them more about what those guys are doing, if you would, please.
Yeah, so here's a couple of guys from the customer base that people are interested in. They've done it. And they're connected out in Silicon Valley with the VC community. And so they understand product market fit, which VCs like to hear about. And they understand the VC side of things. What's important? What are they looking at now? How much risk are they willing to accept? Because that changes from time to time based on the market. So that's going to be really exciting as we flesh that out and look at how we can help government contracting folks understand how important it is. See, you can't have one story. You've got to have a pitch for your government client. You've got to have a pitch for an angel investor. You've got to have a different pitch for a VC investor. And you need to be able to switch between those and understand what's important to each of those stakeholders.
And that's really a good point. And that's also the reason why we need to have this GovConSummit community, because we've got to have a lot of people with different expertise and different talents, but connect them well enough to say, if I had this issue, I know I'd call Jenny and ask her to connect me. Call Oprah and ask her to connect me, because our goal with GovCon is I want to stand up there on my virtual stage and say, you get a contract and you get a contract and you get a contract. But you know what? I can't do that on my own. All I can do is bring people into the GovCon mall, introduce them to each other, and say, those guys are in the food court. These guys are a kiosk. That's an anchor thing. And let's meet at Starbucks in an hour or two. And after you talk to Carmine, maybe if you've made enough progress, you'll be ready to have a conversation with Kirk. Carmine, it's been so great to be on with you. And I'm so excited about how you're going to run the Shark Tank for us and really put something together, because you've been doing this for a long time and you're very involved with an organization that really is trying to advance the success rate in the innovation market. So do you mind kind of just tell a little bit about that as well before we end this?
Yeah, it's awesome. And I'm so glad to be working with you guys. I am also president of the United Inventors Association. We're a very large organization. We're worldwide, mostly based in the US, but we do have a lot of members from outside the country because innovation inventors are everywhere. There's no doubt about it. So the UIA is 100% behind a GovCon because we have a lot of inventors that have products they don't realize. I mean, they could make almost anything. The government, the federal contractors buy, it's just not weapons. That's what I try to tell people about. The government, the federal contractors buy everything. They buy so much product. So that's why I want to get behind this, because I want our inventors, our product developers to see, as Kurt said, there's other places to sell your products. I want to open their mind to that. And it's so important that we all work together to do that. And it's going to be a lot of fun to let them see, because they're going to have that aha moment where they have this product and they think there was only one customer out there for it, but there's so many people out there for different products. And that's why I just love what you guys are doing.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. I've been doing this. This will be the 6th year. It's the first time virtual. But what it's really enabled me to do is reach out across the entire company. I've got pockets of people in Huntsville, Tampa Bay, Orlando, the Space Coast. Obviously, there's a number coming down from DC that are entrepreneurs in different areas that will be giving their lessons learned and their insight. Got a lot of activity out of San Antonio. When you think about it, those are some major military areas, a lot of veterans. So the whole reason I'm really excited about GovConSummit is my goal is to help entrepreneurs be successful in federal contracting, because they hire veterans, veterans hire veterans as well. And what this is really doing is creating stability, innovation, growth, and opportunity. And heck, I'm a taxpayer. And if somebody's going to take taxpayer money, I want it invested in a place that's going to benefit what I care about. And I care about making sure that we're taking care of people downrange. So any other comments from you, Kirk, as we wrap it up?
I am just really looking forward to GovCon this year. I think it's going to be a really great event. And what I've learned with several events I've put on this year is virtual is not bad at all. It allows you to bring together much more creative talent around it. And in our case, what I call the Sherpas for the government market. Those people that know the best routes based on who you're looking for to serve and what you've got.
Well, I'm real excited. Carmine, thanks so much for having us on today.
Oh, no problem. Real quick, Jenny, before we close up, where should people go to learn more about GovCon?
They should go to solvability.com/GovConSummit, all one word.
Cool.
So that's S as in Sam, OLV as in Victor, AB as in whatever, Bravo, ILITY.com, or they can just find me on LinkedIn, or I don't know, I haven't tried this, but I think it's almost time for me to Google myself, the Oprah of Federal Contracting, see what I come up, but definitely reach out to any of us after this podcast, and let's get everybody connected, because we can change the world.
Yeah, this has been so much fun, and we'll continue to spread the word. I love all the military lingo because we don't all get to see that. It's a whole language all on its own. So that's one of the things that a private service person is very important to learn that lingo, because it's very important. I learned it the hard way myself. So that's why I definitely want to be a part of this. So we're going to start wrapping up. Kurt, thank you so much for being on today. Jenny, Oprah, same thing. Thank you for coming on today. All you listeners out there, go on out to GovCon. Listen, check it out. If you can be a part of it, it's very, very important. If you have a product, check it out. Go to UIA. usa.org. We're going to have some information about GovCon on our own webpage. Please go on out to Google Play or iTunes, however you consume your podcast content. Leave us a rating review. We could really use the help. For myself, Carmen Daniska, we thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time on The Launchpad. You all take care.